Welcome back to The Explainer. If you've been tracking the absolute madness of the 2026 World Cup, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're cutting through the noise and breaking down the jaw-dropping stats from Matchday 11. We're going way beyond just reading the final box scores. We're going to look at the underlying data that tells the real, nitty-gritty story of this tournament. So think about this for a second. Would you Pele, a brutal 406-minute curse, and literally the oldest team in World Cup history all have in common? I'll tell you, they are all entirely tied to the matches we just watched. Today's games were completely defined by the extremes of time. We saw teams finally breaking decades-old curses, teenagers chasing ghosts from the 1950s, and veteran squads going head-to-head with Father Time himself. It was a day of historic firsts, and honestly, some pretty agonizing droughts. Section 1. A day of historic firsts, ending the droughts. Okay, let's dive right into this with our first big narrative arc. Teams who are finally tasting glory after years and years of waiting. And we are starting with just the number one. It sounds small, but it represents a totally monumental achievement for Egypt. Because for the first time ever, after 9 separate, frustrating attempts at the World Cup, Egypt has finally secured their very first victory. They overcame New Zealand in a super thrilling 3-1 comeback, and they officially put an end to a really painful historical streak. Now, breaking down the mechanics of this historic win, it's pretty much impossible to ignore the main engine driving this team forward, Mohamed Salah. His record-breaking consistency powered this long-awaited milestone. He scored his 3rd career World Cup goal, which officially gives him the all-time Egyptian record. And even more impressive, Salah has now registered a direct goal contribution in 4 straight World Cup matches. That's just wild. But, it wasn't just the seasoned veterans. We also saw some incredible new blood stepping up, like Mostafa Zico, who casually scored his 3rd goal for Egypt in literally just his 4th international cap. While Egypt made history by getting a win, another team made history simply by finding the back of the net. Let's shift our focus over to the ultimate underdogs, Cape Verde. In a completely thrilling 2-2 draw against a heavily favored Uruguay side, Cape Verde scored their first ever World Cup goals. Not just 1, but 2. And the way they did it was spectacular. It featured a stunning direct free kick by Kevin Pina. I mean, that was only the 2nd direct free kick goal we've seen in the entire tournament so far. To put that into perspective, this brilliantly illustrates just how massive Cape Verde's achievement really is. By earning points in their opening matches, Cape Verde became only the 3rd African team in history to avoid defeat in their first 2 World Cup matches. They are the first to pull off this incredible feat since Senegal's legendary run way back in 2002. So they aren't just showing up to participate, they are making a massive historical statement. Section 2. Spain's youthful dominance, chasing ghosts on the pitch. So we've seen the underdogs rise up, but what about the traditional powerhouses? Well, Spain put on an absolute clinic. They delivered a rapid-fire 4-0 demolition of Saudi Arabia. And the craziest part is, they did it by unleashing their youth. We are watching history unfold right in front of us with Lamine Yamal. At exactly 18 years old in 343 days, Yamal opened the scoring for Spain. And why does that matter so much? Because he's literally chasing the ghost of the greatest to ever do it. Yamal is officially the 2nd youngest player to ever open the scoring in a World Cup match, sitting right behind Pele from all the way back in 1958. But here's the thing, Spain didn't just strike with youth, they struck with devastating speed. Michael Oyarzabal totally tore through the Saudi defense. He became the first Spanish man ever to record 3 goal contributions in the first half of a World Cup match. In fact, actually, he secured those 3 contributions in just the opening 25 minutes. Think about that. He is only the 2nd player in the last 60 years to manage that kind of incredible feat. Spain is currently riding a 32-game unbeaten run, and they look utterly terrifying. Section 3. Aging squads and goal droughts, when time stands still. But as we're learning today, for every young team that is soaring right now, there's a veteran squad hitting a solid brick wall. We're seeing a stark, almost unbelievable contrast in the strategies playing out at this tournament. On one hand, you've got Spain trusting an 18-year-old Yamal to lead their attack. And on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, you have Iran. Against Belgium, Iran fielded a starting 11 with an average age of 32 years and 181 days. That is officially the oldest starting lineup ever recorded for a World Cup match. And you know what? That veteran savvy actually worked. They secured a 0-0 draw. But for their opponents, that 0-0 draw brought up a very painful number, 406. That is the heavy, agonizing number of consecutive World Cup minutes that Belgium has now played without a single one of their own players scoring a goal. I mean, think about the sheer amount of attacking talent Belgium possesses, all of it completely neutralized for 406 straight minutes on the world's biggest stage. So, the crucial takeaway here is how this drought is just boiling over into sheer frustration for Belgium's golden generation. It's a picture of total desperation at this point. They took 23 shots against Iran without scoring. That is their most inefficient attacking display since 1994. They unleashed 11 shots in the first half alone. And honestly, perhaps the most telling stat of the whole match, Romelu Lukaku received a yellow card just 163 seconds after the whistle blew. That is the fastest Belgium booking in World Cup history. The pressure is clearly getting to them. Speaking of pressure and history, let's talk about a psychological curse that has haunted a two-time champion for literal decades. Uruguay has a massive dark cloud looming over them. When they went down a goal to Cape Verde, history told us they weren't going to win. Why? Because Uruguay has failed to win their last 22 matches at a World Cup when they concede the first goal. This is a 60-year curse, folks. Their last comeback win was in 1966 against France. They carried this decades-long ghost all the way into 2026, and sure enough, it stalled them to a draw against Cape Verde.
Section 4. Can the underdogs keep dreaming? The extremes defining 2026.
As we bring this explainer into its final act, we really have to synthesize what these extremes actually mean. We're seeing youth versus age, historic firsts clashing with 60-year curses. These absolute polar opposites are exactly what is making this tournament completely, utterly unpredictable. And right in the middle of all that chaos, we're seeing entirely new records pop up from the most unexpected places. For example, during the Egypt versus New Zealand match, New Zealand's Finn Surman scored a goal. Why is that a big deal? Because he plays in Major League Soccer. That was the 6th goal scored by an MLS player at this tournament, which officially breaks the record for the most goals by MLS players at a single World Cup. Just another absolutely fascinating layer to the 2026 story. So to pull all of this wild data together, here is your core takeaway for the day. The defining stories of Matchday 11 weren't just the final scores. They were the unbroken curses, the decades-long waits, and the collision of generations. When we track these historical extremes, from an 18-year-old phenom matching Pelé to the oldest squad ever taking the pitch, to Egypt finally breaking a 9-tournament curse, we walk away with a much deeper, much richer understanding of the drama unfolding in front of us. Which leaves us with this final thought. With underdogs like Cape Verde stepping up, and traditional giants like Belgium and Uruguay totally struggling under the weight of their own history, is the 2026 World Cup the most unpredictable tournament we've ever seen? Let that sink in as you gear up for the next round of matches. Keep your eyes on the data, guys, because the records are shattering every single day. Thanks for joining me on the Sixplainer, and I'll catch you next time.